Year 4 and welcome to today's reading comprehension on Ian Bland, an interview. There's a picture of Ian there at the side. He's a real person. In actual fact, he's a children's poet. So I want you to consider the following questions. If he was asked these questions, how do you think he would answer them? Okay. So the first one is, when did you first begin to write poetry? Pause now and think about how Ian would answer that question. Right then, well, for me, I would imagine that if he's a children's poet, he's been writing poetry for a long time. I would imagine that it's a lifelong love of poetry, so something that he would have started possibly in primary school, gone into secondary school, through university, and so on into his adult career. What about if he was asked, is becoming a poet easy? How do you think Ian would answer that one? Pause now and think about your answer. Well, for me personally, I think poetry, the answer to that would be yes and no. Yes, because poetry is about getting your emotions and ideas and thoughts down onto paper. Everyone can do that. So you can start the basis of writing a poem. The hard part of poetry writing can be the language choices. Poems tend to be quite short, so your choice of vocabulary needs to be quite specific, and that can be the difficult part of it. What about if it was asked this? What advice would you give an aspiring poet? So if you asked Ian that question, what advice do you think he'd give back? Pause now and have a think. Well, if I was Ian, I'd certainly say, just do it. Have a go, write it down, write a poem, and keep trying and trying and trying again. You'll get more used to it, you'll get better at it, and hopefully you'll embed that love of poetry. So here is a little bit about Ian. So tell us, Ian, why did you become a poet? I've always been fascinated by words and the power that they possess. As a child, I enjoyed stories and songs, but the genre that fascinated me the most was poetry. Given the slightest opportunity, I'd be scribbling down those ideas and begging the nearest person around me to listen to my latest work. When I was training to be a teacher, part of my degree was about creative writing, so I began to get serious about poetry at university. However, it wasn't until I became a teacher that I really decided to become a children's poet. My favourite lesson was to teach literacy, and I naturally gravitated towards poetry. If I couldn't find a suitable poem for a lesson, I'd write it myself. Eventually, I managed to get some work published, so this didn't happen overnight. Not getting published straight away can knock your confidence, but I know I'm a stronger poet for it. In fact, if there's any advice I could offer budding young poets, it'd be this: enjoy the process of writing and performing your poetry. Read lots of poems for inspiration, and whatever you do, don't give up on your dream of seeing your work in print. Now I travel the UK and Europe performing and leading poetry workshops for children and training teachers. It's great fun. I feel like I've got the best job in the world. So, a bit of vocabulary for you guys today. Fascinated, possess, enjoyed, genre, poetry, slightest, opportunity, confidence, advice, inspiration, scribbling, begging, degree, serious, university, gravitated, suitable, published, and budding. There's quite a few difficult words there. So, here we go. Fascinated. It's taking a great interest in something. To possess something means to have something. Enjoyed means to have found it fun. Genre are different types of text. So, for example, it might be poetry, it might be stories, narratives, it might be non-chronological reports, it might be instructional text. Slightest means just a little bit. Opportunity, a chance to do something. Confidence, it belief that you can actually do something. Advice, give a bit of guidance to somebody. Inspiration, have an idea. Scribbling, mark making. Begging, that's pleading with somebody. A degree is a qualification you get at university. Serious means it's not joking, or it's not a joke. A university is higher education, so it comes after secondary school and after sixth form. Gravitated means to move towards something. Suitable, it's okay to use for that purpose. Published means it's written up professionally, so it would be companies that make books. Budding means just starting. So the gist, I want you to pause down and think about, what is the purpose of this text? What type of text is it? What's the point? So the gist is, it's a short biography of Ian Bland and why he became a poet. Almost like in a question-answer kind of way. Again, you know this and you've seen this before, but I will keep doing it again and again and again and again. Who, what, when, and where tend to answer literal questions. Who is a person's name, often indicated by a capital letter. What, it will be an object, a thing, or an event. When is a time reference of some description. Where, it'll be a location or place. If it's a specific location or place and it's a proper noun, it'll have a capital letter. It's a bit of a clue for finding it. Why tends to answer deduction and inference-based questions because it requires a bit of further explanation. Again, going back to using keywords, look at the question, find a keyword that might help you to answer that question, search for it in the text, Read the sentence to contextualize it, then look at your question stem and make sure you're answering what the question's asking for. Again, different types of questions that we have. We've got L, which is literal. The answers are in the text, so use the scanning and skimming to find those words, contextualize them, and then check the question stem. V is vocabulary, it's word choice. D is deductive, so you're using clues within the text and your own knowledge in order to come up with an answer. Evaluative basically means you have an opinion on something, but you're using evidence in the text to support your opinion. Inference is similar to deductive. I will one day sort out that missing zero, so not zero, missing O, but requires interpretation beyond what's in the text. It's reading between the lines. It's probably the most difficult of all these to do. Authorial is the author's choice of language. Why have they used those words to engage the reader? So question time, a bit of modelling. Why do you think Ian agreed to do this interview? So this is an inference question. Pause now and have a think. Right, well, for me, it appears that Ian's got a total love of poetry. And as a former teacher, he wants to share his passion with others, especially children. By being interviewed, it provides an opportunity to give advice to would-be poets, especially young children who might aspire to follow in his path. So here are your questions for today. It's a deductive question, the first one. Has Ian always enjoyed performing his poems? Which word in paragraph 1 means very interested? So that's a vocabulary question. Does Ian still enjoy being a poet? That's deductive. When did Ian become serious about poetry? So that's a literal question. You'll find the answer directly in the text. Is becoming a poet easy? That's deductive. So you need to look for clues in the text for that one. What advice does Ian give to budding poets? It's a literal question. It says so in the text. Why do you think Ian agreed to do this interview? I've kind of just answered that question. So if you skip back in the video, that will help. Is this interview formal or informal? So that's authorial. Now, formal means that it's very structured. Informal would mean it's quite chatty. Okay. Why might Ian have chosen to use this style? That's an authorial intent question. And your evaluative question at the end. What have you learned about being a writer from reading this interview? Make sure you explain and go back to the text to support your answers. Good luck, everyone. See you later. Bye-bye.